So as we talked about a bit earlier in the week, Madison, Wisconsin has been up for grabs. Police-involved shooting of a habitual violent offender who stabbed a police officer and resisted arrest. And that has led to the DSA mobs, I wouldn't say descending on Madison because they live there, so many of them, as well as the great DSA hope for the governor's race, Francesca Hong, who was on scene to play Simon Says with the DSA mobs.
A man died at the hands of state-sanctioned violence.
Say it. Say it.
Murder. Say it. Murder. This is my statement. Murder. This state-sanctioned violence was an execution.
Yeah, you better say it. Yeah, now you get applause.
We no longer can have a system that protects a power and a privilege that puts the pain and lives of armed officers over black people. We cannot protect a system that continues to rain harm and terror. We all deserve to feel safe. It is a human right to be safe.
So the Madison police force is now systemically racist and some sort of death squad and a danger to black people in Madison. That's what we're to believe. And frankly, it was a pathetic scene, one of the most pathetic I've seen, when the police chief's press conference was taken over by one of these DSA goons prattling on for minutes without talking about Zionists and Zionism. And anytime the police chief tried to speak, basically yelling over him and then taking the microphone and taking over the press conference. If there was an image of this sort of, the very thuggery that they pretend to rail against, and the abdication of law enforcement in these places that are dominated by these leftist neo-Bolsheviks, these neo-Bolshevik revolutionaries, that was that image. And as we mentioned, talking about the mass shooting in Seattle, you saw that sort of happen again in a different kind of way. Sean Barnes, the police chief there, who was not around this weekend when that shooting happened near the Space Needle, former police chief of Madison. And the combination of incompetence and identitarian politics that played out in the chaotic, inaccurate, incompetent response to that mass shooting from the DSA crew in Seattle, no different than the DSA crew in Madison, just different circumstances. Scott Walker is the president and CEO of Young America's Foundation, former governor of Wisconsin, of course, and presidential candidate. Scott Walker, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
So the situation in Madison and the sorts of things you're hearing from the Francesca Hongs of the world, somebody who has previously called for the abolition of ICE and borders and all the, frankly, all the planks in the DSA platform. That seems to be, or appears to be the candidate who's going to run against Congressman Tiffany for the governor's mansion in Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, right now, in fact, they had a debate last night, and debates, in my mind, may matter in presidential races. They don't matter in gubernatorial elections unless there's something dramatic that happens. Remember Terry McAuliffe a few years ago when he said that parents shouldn't play a role in their kids' education. That became a tagline that was used in ads. Last night, there wasn't anything like that. So short of an absolute meltdown in the next few days, I think Francesca Hong's going to be the nominee. She is radical. She is crazy. This is what democratic socialists do. It's not just her. This is a pattern all across the country. And this example that you mentioned with the officer-involved shooting in Madison is a good reminder, hopefully a wake-up call to people all across the country. What you played, and I'm glad that you played it, because it was not just that she said it was an execution. She was baited into this. This is a mob rule. This was something where, she's gotten closer to being the nominee. She's trying to tone her radical rhetoric down a little bit just to be somewhat plausible with independent swing voters in Wisconsin. But we saw it, live as it was happening there. She couldn't help but being baited by this mob interacting this way, which then led to further chaos. Remember, you're well aware of this. This happened right on the state line between Wisconsin and Illinois. 6 years ago, Tony Evers, the governor of Wisconsin at the time, today as well, a Democrat, basically did something similar after Jacob Blake was shot by an officer in the head. Subsequent videos showed that this guy was out of control, that he'd been tasered, that all these things had happened, and so was ultimately involved shooting was ruled justified, but by all accounts. But they burnt major parts of downtown Kenosha down because of the rhetoric of Tony Evers. He now wisely responded the other day in Madison by saying, hey, there's an independent review, let's be respectful, let's be responsible. She failed the test of leadership, and that's what happens with Democratic Socialists, whether it's here, Seattle, Chicago, Washington, you name it. That's what we're up against. And
so what's the balance of power, if you will? Where do things stand in Wisconsin? This, the swing state for many cycles now, and it's gone back and forth. You had your run, and then the sort of nondescript teachers union apparatchik, Evers, has had his run. Where does Wisconsin stand today, do you think?
Well, right now it's a toss-up. The state Senate, state assembly are both controlled by Republicans, although with the very, very liberal Supreme Court adding additional radical political elements the last couple of years, they all but forced a change in redistricting. And so the state Senate is on the precipice of potentially flipping. Now, if Tom Tiffany wins and he does well, he probably not only carries a victory in the governor's race, but could be strong enough to carry three of the key state Senate races. On the flip side, if things go horribly wrong, and not only does Tiffany lose, but it's a blowout, you could see the state Senate and the state assembly both flip. The court's already in liberal hands, and you could see a state that, just a few years ago was one of the leaders when I was there under conservative reform flip the other way. But this, and we've talked about this before, this isn't just about Wisconsin. This is a forecast. What I've said, we've predicted on college campuses, the Young America's Foundation, for years, that this idea that people, these radicals, they'll grow out of it, they'll grow up, they'll get a job, they'll start a family, they'll pay taxes. No, these people go off and run for office, like Franziska Hong. We see it in New York City with the mayor. We see it elsewhere, and their policies don't work. But sadly, tragically, not only in college but even in K through 12 education, they're not learning the truth. They're not learning the facts about American and world history. And what we're seeing in so many of these cities and communities is rehashing what we've seen for decades now in places like Venezuela, where Democratic Socialists were elected and now can't be taken out of office, even though they've ruined that country.
Well, that's the concern. You mentioned it, the recent run of Supreme Court races that have gone decidedly to the left. And even just raising the prospect that Tom Tiffany could get blown out may be jarring to some people listening. I mean, is Wisconsin sliding away, do you think, in this, frankly, in the Trump era? Is that what's happening?
Well, the kicker is, in two of the last three presidential elections, Donald Trump has won.
Right.
And obviously the 2020 barely lost. In each of those races, razor thin. Same with my races, same with the Evers races. But the real concern, particularly since COVID, one of the interesting factors, demographics sometimes play into politics in a bigger way than we expect. But because so many places allowed working from home, a lot of the whacked out left-wing extremists that go to the University of Wisconsin-Madison might have moved on and gone to New York or San Francisco or L.A. or Washington, D.C., but because of work from home changes during COVID, many of them have stayed in that area. So those numbers, particularly in the Supreme Court races, we've seen 80+% turnout for the radical candidate the last couple cycles in the Supreme Court. And so my worry is if not only those numbers increase, but the intensity increases there, that people like Tom Tiffany and others have to get that coalition that elected Donald Trump in 24 to awaken again, to say it's not enough to just stand up and support Donald Trump. They have to support people like Tom Tiffany and others, or they're going to be stuck with leaders like Francisco Hong and others who are not just going to be combative with President Trump, who are going to literally tear down the state. I mean, the images we saw in the last couple of days, even of presumably in many cases liberal voting citizens in Madison, they're kind of getting what they voted for, but where they're being accosted, just driving a car down the street, not being able to get out, pleading with people saying they support them, but not being able to get out. I don't think that plays well outside of Madison. I don't think it plays well even in parts of Madison. But that's what you get if things don't change in terms of the turnout in these upcoming elections.
And it seems to me that both the right and some on the left that are sort of more old school Democrats have underestimated the organizing prowess of these neo-Bolsheviks, the DSA crowd.
Absolutely. Yeah, they've got the passion, they've got the youth vote, and by 2028, the majority of votes cast for president will be millennials and Gen Z. And if we don't wake up, our nation can be going quickly. We already saw Pride in America, according to Gallup just a few weeks ago, lowest level in the 25 years of that history. That's not because our kids are choosing wrong. That's because we're not doing enough to educate them on what it means to be an American.
And your comrade there, Ron Johnson, is front and center in the Senate Homeland Security Committee hearing going on right now involving that sad little man, Tony Fauci. Ron Johnson, I mean, is there a lesson from Ron Johnson? Because he's been in a state that elects Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson is an unabashed conservative. He's been a leader on controversial issues where he's taken flack, like on COVID and others, and yet he is able to win in Wisconsin. So is there a lesson for Tom Tiffany and others to be taken from Ron Johnson?
Yeah, authenticity wins the day. It's true even with younger voters. Authentic exchanges, I think that's why Donald Trump did well, particularly in 2024, why Ron has done well. It's why I won 3 times. You can't try and be something you're not. I actually think in the end, Francisco Hong is the nominee. Tom Tiffany is a very low-key, kind of easygoing kind of guy, very typical of a lot of, average Midwesterner. Some people grumbled about that early on. I think it's going to be a great contrast to Hong, the F-bomb dropping activist who just comes across as angry all the time. And that's a reminder. We don't need a leader who's not only angry, but who's just blatantly wrong. We need a steady Eddie, and that's what you get with Tom Tiffany, I think.
Andrew Sullivan wrote this almost a decade ago now, but basically sort of what you were talking about earlier. We all live on a college campus now. That what was happening on the campus between the late 60s and the turn of the century is now metastasized into the culture writ large. And I wonder, though, with the Trump administration's approach to the anti-Semitism on campus and other matters with respect to financing of and distribution of taxpayer funds to colleges, if you're seeing more progress towards peaceful pluralism on college campuses in your role as Young America's Foundation CEO, are we clawing some sanity back on college campuses, or are we still running in place?
Yes to both. Yes, there's been a tremendous help. With the Trump administration, combination Department of Education, talking about withholding funds for those that don't offer, level playing field in terms of free speech. That's a basic minimum requirement. We've seen tremendous progress there. Plus, you look at someone like Harmeet Dillon, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, who's really just been a pit bull on this issue. She's been great. That said, you're constantly having to push. This should be something. A college campus should be a place where free speech and open debate and discussion is the norm. I mean, this should be the place where it's the least resistant. It should be celebrated, and yet we constantly have to have threats to push back on this, be it in the courts or elsewhere. So, yes, we're seeing progress, but we got a long ways to go. The left doesn't want to give it up because people like these radical democratic socialists know they only thrive if people are getting, the slogans and not the facts. And so that's why we do as much work as we do at Young America's Foundation. By the way, if someone's listening, YAF.org, you're under attack, we've got your back. Let us know and we'll step in and help out.
YAF.org, President and CEO of Young America's Foundation and former Wisconsin governor, former presidential candidate Scott Walker. Scott, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joined us in the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.